Good morning, class 10. Today we shall conclude the chapter Rise of Nationalism in Europe. But before I start from the place where we stopped, let me discuss today some of the new terms which you have studied in this lesson. You have studied the term serfdom. This term came on page 6. You have studied serfdom. Now, serfdom was very much similar like slavery. You have heard of slavery, how slaves were kept in the house of their masters and how ill-treated they were, how badly and cruelly they were treated by their masters. So, serfdom and slavery is very much similar to one another. The serfs could be bought or sold as the slaves could be bought or sold. Similarly, the serfs or like we had slaves in India, similarly there were serfs. Serfs could also be purchased or sold. The serfs had to work on a plot of land, mines, forests, etc. So like slaves had to do different kinds of work, they were treated very badly, they had to do lot of physical labor, and sometimes they were paid nothing, or the wages which were given to them were very nominal wages, almost nothing. Similarly, the serfs were also like slaves. They were purchased, they were sold, they had to work on large pieces of land, they had to work in mines, in forests, etc. So, serfdom is like slavery. Now, another term you have studied in this lesson is manorial dues. You have studied manorial dues. First of all, you must know what is the word manorial. The word manorial is coming from the word manor, M-A-N-O-R. M-A-N-O-R, manor. The word manor here means presence of land. The word manor means presence of land. And there were lords of manor. Lords of manor, M-A-N-O-R. Lords of manor means those who owned these manors or large pieces of land. The ownership of land or the manor was called, these people were called lords of manor. Now, manorial dues, like we had taxes in India. You have studied that the peasants and all had to pay land revenue to their masters. You have studied in history, land revenue word you have studied in your previous classes. So manorial dues were also like land revenue. If you want to write, you can write down the meaning of manorial dues. The fees that the peasants or serfs owe to the nobles who was their landlord. So like in India, you have studied when there was zamindari system, there were rich landlords, they were called zamindars, and the peasants who worked on their fields, they had to pay land revenue to the zamindar. Similarly, there were manorial dues. The serfs or the peasants had to pay the fees. That was called manorial dues. To whom they had to pay the fees? To the nobles who owned large pieces of land. So manorial dues were very similar to land revenue in India. Then another new term you have studied is feudalism. Feudalism, and you have also studied feudal lords. System of land ownership. System of land ownership was called feudalism. System of land ownership was called feudalism. The king gave land to the lords. The presents of land were called manor. The king gave land to the lords, and the presents of land which were given to the lords were called manor. So what is feudalism? The system of land ownership was called feudalism. Who were the feudal lords? All those people, the rich people who owned large pieces of land, who were the owners of large pieces of land, they were called as feudal lords. So these new terms you had studied in this chapter, and I hope now you have understood their meaning. Now let us continue with the strange case of Britain. In our last class, we studied two important things in this chapter: unification of Germany and unification of Italy. Today we will study the strange case of Britain. The model of a nation or the nation state, some scholars have argued, is Great Britain. In Britain, the formation of the nation state was not the result of a sudden upheaval or revolution. It was the result of a long drawn out process. There was no British nation prior to the 18th century. Before the 18th century, there was no British nation. The primary identities of the people who inhabited the British Isles were ethnic ones, such as English, Welsh, Scot, and Irish. All of these ethnic groups had their own cultural and political traditions. But as the English nation steadily grew in wealth, importance, and power, it was able to extend its influence over the other nations of the island. The English Parliament, which had seized power from the monarchy in 1688 at the end of the protracted conflict, was the instrument through which a nation state with England at its center came to be forged. Now, the line which begins from the Act of Union, this is important. Whatever we have read till now, it is not so important. You don't have to learn anything from those lines. But now what I will read is important. The Act of Union 1707 between England and Scotland, that resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, meant in effect that England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. All these lines you have to learn. A separate question comes on the Act of Union of 1707. I am reading once again. The Act of Union 1707 between England and Scotland. So the Act of Union was between England and Scotland. That resulted in the formation of United Kingdom of Great Britain. United Kingdom of Great Britain came into existence because of the Act of Union of 1707 between England and Scotland. Meant in effect that England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. The British Parliament was henceforth dominated by its English members. Each line is very important. The British Parliament was dominated by its English members now onwards. The growth of a British identity meant that Scotland's distinctive culture and political institutions were systematically suppressed. I am reading again. The growth of a British identity meant that Scotland's distinctive culture and political institutions were systematically suppressed. Why the culture and political institutions of Scotland were suppressed? Because England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. So everything related to England was dominating, and whatever was related to Scotland, it was suppressed. The Catholic clans that inhabited the Scottish Highlands suffered terrible repression whenever they attempted to assert their independence. The Catholic clans, all those people who were Catholics, those who lived in Scottish Highlands, they were suffering a lot. They were repressed whenever they attempted to assert their independence. Whenever they wanted to declare their independence, they were repressed, they were suppressed. The Scottish Highlanders were forbidden to speak their Gaelic language. The Scottish Highlanders were forbidden to speak their Gaelic language or wear their national dress, and large numbers were formally driven out of their homeland. Not only restrictions were imposed, they could not speak their Gaelic language, they could not wear their national dress, but also they were forced to move out of their homeland. So such was the treatment given to the people living in Scotland. So all these lines, children, are relating to the Act of Union of 1707. You have to learn them. It's a very important part of this page. Ireland suffered a similar fate. Remember, Act of Union is over. Now what I am reading is different. Ireland suffered a similar fate. It was a country deeply divided between Catholics and Protestants. The English helped the Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominance over a large Catholic country. Catholic revolts against British dominance were suppressed. After a failed revolt led by Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen in 1798, Ireland was forcibly incorporated into the United Kingdom in 1801. A new British nation was forged through the propagation of dominant English culture. The symbols of the New Britain, the British flag, Union Jack, the national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, and the English language were actively promoted, and the older nations survived only as subordinate partners in this union. In this paragraph, children, you don't have to learn anything. Come to the next page. Visualizing the nation. While it is easy enough to represent a ruler through a portrait or a statue, how does one go about giving a face to a nation? Artists in the 18th and 19th centuries found a way out by personifying a nation. That means speaking about a nation as if it's something human. In other words, they represented a country as if it were a person. Nations were then portrayed as female figures. The female form that was chosen to personify the nation did not stand for any particular woman in real life. Like, for example, you can take your own country, India. We consider India as our motherland. We have personified India. We use the word she for India. Why? Because we consider India we personify India and talk about India as a human figure. The female form that was chosen to personify the nation did not stand for any particular woman in real life. Rather, it sought to give the abstract idea of the nation a concrete form. That is, the female figure became an allegory of the nation. Now, you must learn the meaning of the word allegory. All these things can be asked in the exam. Allegory means when an abstract idea is expressed through a person or a thing. When an abstract idea is expressed through a person or a thing, we call it as allegory. You will recall that during the French Revolution, artists used the female allegory to portray ideas such as liberty, justice, and the republic. These ideals were represented through specific objects or symbols. As you would remember, the attributes of liberty are the red cap or the broken chain, while justice is generally a blindfolded woman carrying a pair of weighing scales. Similar female allegories were invented by artists in the 19th century to represent the nation. In France, she was christened Marianne. Underline. From here you have to learn everything. In France, she was christened Marianne, a popular Christian name which underlined the idea of a people's nation. Her characteristics were drawn from those of liberty and republic: the red cap, the tricolor, the cockade. Statues of Marianne were erected in public squares to remind the public of a national symbol of unity and to persuade them to identify with it. Marianne images were marked on coins and stamps. So, in France, how was the nation portrayed? It was portrayed in the form of Marianne, which underlined the idea of people's nation. The idea of people's nation was made popular among the people in France through Marianne. Her characteristics were drawn from those of liberty and republic, the red cap, the tricolor, and the cockade. Statues of Marianne were erected in public squares to remind the public of the national symbols of unity and persuade them to identify with it. Marianne images were marked on coins and stamps. Now, similarly, Germania became the allegory of a German nation, Marianne of the French nation and Germania of the German nation. In visual representations, Germania wears a crown of oak leaves, as you can see in the picture, as the German oak stands for heroism. So these two paragraphs you must learn. Now let us come to page 26, nationalism and imperialism. In the last quarter of the 19th century, nationalism no longer retained its idealistic liberal democratic sentiment of the first half of the century, but became a narrow creed with limited ends. During this period, nationalist groups became increasingly intolerant of each other and ever ready to go to war. The major European powers in turn manipulated the nationalist aspirations of the subject peoples in Europe to further their own imperialist aims. There's nothing to learn in this. Now the next paragraph is important. The most serious source of nationalist tension in Europe after 1871 was the area called the Balkan. In the exam, many times you are asked to describe about the Balkan issue or to discuss about the Balkan issue, then you will write all this. The most serious source of nationalist tension in Europe after 1871 was the area called the Balkans. The Balkan was a region of geographical and ethnic variation comprising modern day Romania. Underline all this, it is very, very important for your exams. Comprising modern day Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, and Montenegro, whose inhabitants were broadly known as the Slavs. Now, children, here I must tell you, this is not a spelling mistake. This is Slavs. This is not slaves. Do not make any change in the spelling, otherwise you will get a 0 in the exam for this small mistake, because this will become a blunder. It is Slavs. Often in the exam it is asked a very important question from this paragraph: who were the Slavs? So you will start writing from the Balkan was a region of geographical and ethnic variation comprising modern day Romania, everything you will write, and were broadly known as the Slavs. A large part of the Balkans was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. The spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in the Balkans, together with the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire, made this region very explosive. That means why the Balkan issue rose? Because there was a spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in Balkans, and together with the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire disintegrated and the idea of romantic nationalism was spreading in the Balkan region. This made this region very explosive. All through the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire had sought to strengthen itself through modernization and internal reforms, but with very little success. One by one, its European subject nationalities broke away from its control and declared independence. Whose control? Balkan control. Gradually, the European subject nationalities they were declaring their own independence, and they were taking themselves apart from the Balkans. The Balkan peoples based their claims for independence or political rights on nationality and used history to prove that they had once been independent but had subsequently been subjugated by foreign powers. So, in order to show their authority, show their superiority, what did the Balkan people do? They tried to tell everybody about their history, about their political rights, and they tried to tell the world that they had their history shows that they had been independent, and now they were being overpowered by foreign powers. Hence, the rebellious nationalities in the Balkans thought of their struggles as attempts to win back their long lost independence. The rebellious nationalities in the Balkans now thought that it was the time to continue their struggles and to bring back their long lost independence. As the different Slavic nationalities struggled to define their identity and independence, the Balkan area became an area of intense conflict. All the Balkan issue is going on from the previous paragraph, it is continuing here also. The Balkan area became an area of intense conflict. The Balkan states were fiercely jealous of each other, and each hoped to gain more territory at the expense of others. That means there was rivalry, there was jealousy and rivalry among the Balkan states themselves. Each wanted to become more powerful than the other. Matters were further complicated because the Balkans also became the scene of big power rivalry. During this period, there was intense rivalry among the European powers over trade and colonies, as well as naval and military might. These rivalries were very evident in the way the Balkan problem unfolded. So, the way the Balkan problem was becoming serious day by day, the rivalry among the European powers was becoming very evident. Each power, now who were these European powers? Each power, Russia, Germany, England, Austro-Hungary. What did they want? What did these European powers want? They wanted to control the Balkans and have control over the Balkan area. Each power, Russia, Germany, England, Austro-Hungary, was keen on countering the hold of other powers over the Balkans. They wanted that Balkan area should come under their control. Russia wanted Balkan area to come under their control. Germany wanted the Balkans to come under their control. Similarly, England and Austro-Hungary. So each were trying to overpower the other to get the Balkan area under their control. Was keen on countering the hold of other powers over the Balkans and extending its control over the area. This led to a series of wars in the region and finally the First World War. So this Balkan issue finally led to the First World War. So all this you have to learn, children. Nationalism aligned with imperialism led Europe to disaster in 1914. Nationalism aligned with imperialism led Europe to disaster in 1914. What happened in 1914? The First World War started. Meanwhile, many countries in the world which had been colonized by European powers in the 19th century began to impose imperial domination. The anti-imperial movements that developed everywhere were nationalist, in the sense that they all struggled to form independent nation states and were inspired by a sense of collective national unity, forged in confrontation with imperialism. European ideas of nationalism were nowhere replicated, for people everywhere developed their own specific variety of nationalism. But the idea that societies should be organized into nation states came to be accepted as natural and universal. This paragraph is not for you to learn. Learning part is confined with the Balkan issue on page 26. Then unification of Germany and Italy, very very important. Then on page 23 you have the word allegory, and you have to learn about Marianne and Germania. Then you must learn about Code Napoleon, as I have told you earlier. Code Napoleon is very important. Then you must know the ideology of the conservatives and the liberals. This is also very important. And that's all. So you must first of all read this chapter very very thoroughly. But whatever I have told you, you must learn. That is one part of this chapter. But this does not mean that you can easily ignore the rest of the paragraphs. You need not pay attention to other paragraphs. Please don't make this blunder. You have to read the whole chapter many times. Don't read the whole chapter in one day, otherwise you will get confused. 2 to 3 pages you must read every day, so that you give it a careful and a slow reading, and then only you will remember things. You have to remember every big and small detail, because anything can be asked from anywhere in your board exams. Now next time we will be doing the question answers. Thank you, children.